I cannot be silent.
Back when Eisenhower was the president, golf courses is where most of his time was spent. So I never really listened to what the president said because in general I believed that the general was politically dead. But he always seemed to know when the muscles were about to be flexed. Because I remember him saying something, mumbling something about a military-industrial complex.
As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our home nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problem, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent.
Each one reach one, each one time.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone got to go to work. Work, peace. Spirit said work.
I cannot be silent.
Empowering the body, mind, and spirit. This is We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Rustino and Larry Pinckney.
Okay.
And at this point, I'm sorry, I was a little slow on the uptake there. The music ran out, and I was still trying to make phone calls in the background. You are listening to the United We Strike Radio Marathon for July 12th, 2014. My name is Gary Hendershot, and I'm producing this segment of the show from my secret underground bunker just south of Washington, D.C. And right now on the line, I've got Phil Rustino and Leslie Abbey. And I will, in the background, be trying to line up one more caller that Phil's asked me to set up. But, Phil, at this point, it's your show.
Well, thank you very much, Gary, and everybody out there listening. Welcome to the July 12th, 2014 broadcast of We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Rustino and Larry Pinckney. And we are once again happy to be participating in the monthly radio marathon, UnitedWeStrike.com international 24-hour monthly radio marathon. And our motto is, don't buy, don't comply, ask why. And we encourage you all to get over to the UnitedWeStrike.com website. And there's all kinds of good things there, and please take a look at all the information there. We're having a little trouble tonight, folks, getting a hold of our co-host, Larry Pinckney, but we're going to try to get either Larry or my cousin Janet Rustino in New York City, who has been on air with us before and actually filled in for me when I was unable to make the show. But tonight we have a very, very special guest with us. Her name is Leslie Abbey. And Leslie Abbey is a documentary filmmaker, photographer, and social worker. A native New Yorker, Leslie Abbey has traveled the world creating films that reflect the human spirit. Leslie began to develop a love for photography while living in New Mexico and working as a social worker with Southwest American Indians. Her passion for photography paved the way for her growth as she launched into videography. Leslie has been in private practice as a clinical social worker in North Belmore, New York since 1986. And what we have Leslie on tonight for is to talk about her latest film. And it's been getting a lot of attention lately. It was just recently screened at the Long Island International Film Expo, and that was actually yesterday that the film was screened there. The name of the film is Buffalo Nation, The Children Are Crying. And it's we're really happy to have Leslie on. If folks want to plug in the YouTube channel for it, Leslie Abbey is the YouTube user, and that's spelled Leslye. Last name is Abbey, Abbey. And from there you'll be able to link on to Buffalo Nation, The Children Are Crying, and there's a trailer for it. I do want to say, Leslie, are you here with us?
Hello, Phil, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak about Buffalo Nation. It sounds like you're making a phone call.
Oh, yes, that's
Janet Rustino. Let's
we'll
hope
see.
She's home.
We'll see. But and my understanding is Janet was able to make the film yesterday, and if we can get a hold of her, that would be great. We'll bring her into the show, and she could give her take on it as well. But Leslie, now that we have you on air, you know, I've done a little bit of intro for you. Maybe you could fill in the. Oh, you're welcome. Maybe you could expand a little more on your background for our listeners and give us a little bit more of a introduction.
Well, thank you. I guess my personal and professional connection with the American Indians began in 1979 when I was working in New Mexico at a pre-release offender house in Albuquerque. And all of a sudden, you know, it was so interesting. I'd see the American Indians, and they were like watching me from a distance, and they would start to make this circle, and then they'd be coming closer and closer, and then they would approach me. And it turned out that, you know, they were really checking me out to see my character, to see if I was really, you know, authentic in my the work that I was doing.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Oh, there's Janet.
Hello,
Janet.
Hey, okay. Yes, we're going to stop you right there, Leslie, just to make sure Janet is with us. Janet, we're live on air right now. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. Oh, digital delay. Okay,
very
yes,
good.
I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay.
Fabulous. Great to be with you.
Very
all.
good.
Yes.
All right. We just had Leslie giving a little bit of a background, just starting to give a little bit of background, and we want to thank Janet for joining us on such short notice. Larry's unable to be with us tonight, so we suggested Gary Hendershot reach out to you, Janet, and we're really thankful that you're there with us. So what we're going to do now, Janet, is let Leslie go back to introducing herself and her background. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just here. When you want me to chirp in, let me know. Okay.
Welcome, Janet. Thank you so much for your support.
You're quite welcome.
I was speaking about in 1979 when I was working in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with pre-released offenders, and how the American Indians started to, you know, check me out to see if I was, you know, real and authentic and could be trusted. And within a month or two, my whole caseload became the American Indians. Either they were Navajo or Pueblo, and mainly the indigenous people from the Southwest who were incarcerated. And it turned out that 99% of them had their violations were as a result of them drinking. And I realized that, you know, seeing the American Indians drink was like something I had never seen before. And after doing some more research and some studying, I found out that the indigenous people in that part of the country really don't have the ability to process carbohydrates. So you have a high rate of diabetes. You have alcoholism that they're not able to process, and it just really destroys them, and they become very much addicted. So I came back to New York. I got my MSW and also my alcohol and substance abuse license by the state of New York, with every intention of going back and working with the American Indians. And yet I realized that I didn't feel that I could accomplish what I wanted to. It would have just been a very difficult thing for me to return back to New Mexico when I started my practice here, and I was going to school here, and my children were here, and my roots were in New York. That's it. And eventually I started to get letters from different American Indian institutions asking for money, and I would send money to one group, the United American Indian Rights Funds, the college funds, the school funds, and then I was giving money to the Oglala Lakota College, and I thought that was good. And I said, why am I keep just sending a little bit of money when I have a skill? So I wrote to them and I said, I'd really like to come and present an alcoholism workshop, or I could do a summer program. And I said, I think that would probably be, more, I guess it felt more productive than just sending you $20. And so I went with
anybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anybody could give money, and you could have a skill you're giving that isn't that, plentiful. So, yeah, great.
Yeah, so I enlisted the help of a former professor, Dr. Catherine Papel, who just recently actually passed away. She passed away at 97, and she was wonderful in designing a course and a program, and then they said, yes, we could come, and they invited us out, and I was all set to go by myself, and Dr. Papel, who was in her 80s at that point, I'll call her Katie because that's what people do when they know her for more than a week, she said, I'll go with you. Now I'm taking this 88-year-old woman and I were in this little tiny plane after we, to go to Rapid City, and we actually did. We presented 3 workshops there, and I met some people and became friendly, and then started a personal relationship with the family, with the Badwoon family. So you have another call coming in.
Yeah, we're sorry about this, Leslie.
Sorry,
but,
we can take a break.
It's
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we've got Larry.
Larry.
Larry's the show's other co-host. We're live on air right now. We have with us Leslie Abbey, the filmmaker, as well as Janet Restino, who's filled in for us before on air live. And it seems like Larry Pinckney, the show's co-host, was just brought in. Larry, are you with us?
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry
great.
about all the problems we've been having, but yes, okay. I'm definitely with you.
Great. We were just introducing our guest Leslie Abbey, the filmmaker of the recent documentary that's been screening around at film festivals, Buffalo Nation. The Children Are Crying, and Leslie was given a background on how she got started as a social worker out in New Mexico and became introduced to the Southwest American Indians there and was saw that most of her practice was with them. And then upon returning to her native New York, she had taken a break for a while from that work and the Native Americans and had was busy with her children. But then where we picked up or where we left off, rather, Leslie had gotten together with a professor who she had at school a while back, a woman of 88 years, and wanted to do a little more than just send money to the cause there. And they got on a plane and went out to Rapid City. Is it North Dakota, Rapid City, Leslie?
Dakota.
South Dakota. Okay, and they wanted to go out. Was it the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation that you were traveling to?
Yes, that's where the Oglala Lakota College
the Lakota Nation is, and so you want to pick it up there, Leslie. You had just traveled out there with your 88-year-old professor, and you're
Yeah.
in one of those little planes that go up and down and bounce, and so there you are in Rapid City. You're landing in Rapid City, and then where did you go?
Then we drove down to the reservation, which was about 120 miles, more or less, give or take, and they hosted us from there. But, after that, I had developed friendships, especially with the Badwoon family, and I kept going back and, staying with them and meeting different people. And each year I went back, going to powwow, going to sweat lodges, but each year I noticed that the reservation was more deprived than the year before, and the people were more dysfunctional. They were having a harder time, and nothing ever. I kept thinking, usually you would think people are starting to, pull together and improve their lives and everything, but this was actually the opposite, and it was like, oh my God, what's happening here? Yeah. It's shocking. It really is.
And when was that? I'm sorry, Leslie, to jump in, but when was it that you went back out there, began going out to the Pine Ridge Reservation? What year would you say that was? You were in New Mexico back in the late 70s, early 80s, correct?
Right, in 1980, and then I came back to New York. I got my degrees with alcoholism, substance abuse, and social work, and then I did a lot of postgraduate work in Manhattan. Right. But I still had this connection to the American Indians.
Right.
I felt very strongly that, someday I would be able to go back and do some work, naturally thinking as a social worker.
Right.
And interestingly, because when I was there in 95 or 96, one of the elders said to me, you really should be documenting this on film because, you're taking so many pictures, but you're not able to really tell our story.
So that's when you first went out to the Pine Ridge in the mid-90s, it sounds like?
Yes.
And you said the Badwoon family. Is that their name, Badwoon?
No, the Badwoon. It's interesting you said Bedouin because
yes.
When I got there, this woman I had met here, she said, my mother will put you up. Her name is Vera Badwoon. Uh-huh. But I was so nervous when I called her from eastern South Dakota. I think that's where Sioux City is.
Yes.
Forgive me if I get my geography wrong. I was so nervous. I said, hello, is this Mrs. Badlands? She said, Badlands? No, there's no Badlands here. And I said, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I said, it's Badwoon. Yes. And then she said, but I don't have any food. I said, that's fine. As long as I could stay there, I will take you out. I will buy food. And she was right. There was very little food out there. People don't have much. They really do live hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And that's my introduction to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
And just for those who might be just tuning in, you were there to give workshops on what?
Alcoholism.
And that was with the professor you had, the 88-year-old.
Catherine Patel.
God bless her. So the two of you went out there, and that was somewhere around 1995, it sounds like?
Yeah, 1994. So I've really been involved with this group of people, with the Lakota on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation since that time.
Gotcha. So this sounds like it was an annual pilgrimage out there for you from New York to the reservation?
As often as I could. It's quite expensive to go to South Dakota because, you don't have a lot of planes going there. It's not like, I'll fly to Los Angeles for like $300. No, you fly to Rapid City for almost $700. So it's quite costly.
And so when did you began taking photographs on that first trip or subsequent trips where you were chronicling your experiences there with photography?
Yes, and I was actually started filming, doing still photography when I was in the Southwest in 1979.
Right.
And so I was, kind of shooting, and I have like a lot of pictures.
So that was something right off the bat you were doing with the Lakotas at the Pine Ridge Reservation, and then somewhere along the line there, it was suggested to you by them that you do a film.
Yes, that I start recording my experiences on film.
Yes.
So, let me see, in 2008, now we're jumping,
Yes.
I received an email from Red Bear, and it was the paper by Stephanie Schwartz, who was a Native American journalist, even though she was not Native American herself. And the title of the paper was The Arrogance of Ignorance. The Arrogance of Ignorance. Out of sight and out of mind. And what people don't realize is, well, these people are poor. Well, we're poor. People are poor today. People were poor then. And, why can't they pull themselves up, so to speak, and really take charge and do this and that? Not realizing that these people are living in practically total isolation in the poorest county in the United States. And they were left with nothing because the reservation, quote unquote, that we know, they were really designed as prisoner of war camps. And this reservation was known as Prisoner of War Camp number 344.
It actually had a number and was registered with the U.S. government as such.
And it's in the movie. You can actually see that. I have a copy of that paper.
My God. Well, so the filming for Buffalo Nation began somewhere around 2008.
2008. I wrote I called this woman and I sent her an email and I begged her. I said, please, I'm a social worker. I've worked with these people before. I'm familiar with many of the families there. Let me come and film this terrible tragedy. The children were committing suicide at 150% greater than mainstream American children.
And that's the second part of the title of the film, I believe, is The Children Are Crying. Buffalo Nation, The Children Are Crying. And I did watch the trailer, and I do want to repeat for folks how they could see the trailer for this film on YouTube. You want to go to youtube.com/ and type in Leslie, Leslye, Abbey. Abbey, and that'll get you to Leslie Abbey's YouTube channel. And on there, the trailer for the film, Buffalo Nation, The Children Are Crying, and the trailer's about 5 minutes or so. And I just want to, if you would allow me, Leslie and Larry and Janet, I would like to read the short narrative that's under that film trailer. Buffalo Nation, The Children Are Crying, tells the story of the Lakota Nation through their own hearts and minds. The Lakota Sioux and many other indigenous nations are forced to live on the reservation, a designated prisoner of war camp, just as Leslie was just describing. This movie is a saga of displacement, neglect, deprivation, abolishment of traditional beliefs, language, mores, and culture. Yet despite the many challenges, the Lakota will not give up. Against all odds and in the face of alcoholism, diabetes, gangs, violence against women, and a host of physical and psychological problems, they continue their struggle to survive. Isolation, poverty, lack of basic needs, and no access or availability of support encompasses the daily lives of the Lakota. The Lakota people are crying for help. The children are sacrificing themselves by committing suicide at a rate of 150% greater than the youth in mainstream America. And that's the description. This is the film. How long is the documentary in total length?
Well, the
Leslie?
documentary currently is an hour 40 minutes, but I think I'm going to try to tighten it up and bring it down to 130. Everybody's story is so sad. It was so hard to make choices. I have 50 or 60, between 50 and 60 hours of footage, and we tried to squeeze it down to an hour and a half, but we ran over a little bit. But we're going to be working on that. It's a very powerful and sad movie, and it's a human rights issue. I mean, it's not only a political issue. This is a human rights issue. This is America, And I believe I sent you a review that you might want to read. I don't know if you have your email.
Yes, I do. I have them right here. And the one review is from Dick Darnell. Is that the one you're asking, or from the other one from the Native Village?
Yes, Native Village.
Okay, great. Here's one. Buffalo Nation is a powerful film, and this is from Gina Boltz, Native Village 500. Now, is that, I don't understand the significance of Native Village 500. Is that also a camp number?
No, she publishes, Gina publishes an online internet newsletter.
So that's actually the publication.
And that's the publication.
I got you.
Native Village 500.
Buffalo Nation is a powerful film that accurately portrays the oppression and desperation of life on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, otherwise known as Prisoner of War Camp number 344. Told by the Lakota people in their own words, Buffalo Nation documents the pain and turmoil caused by America's cruelties and the ongoing genocide against the Sioux people. It disproves America's honorable intentions and equality for all. Neither exists for Indian country. They never have. While people on Pine Ridge suffer in third world conditions, the U.S. government ignores its legal obligations to protect and provide for them. The effects are devastating. Painful to watch and difficult to absorb, Buffalo Nation is a testament to America's failure as a country, a government, and as a people. The Pine Ridge Reservation is a shame shared by all Americans who turn a blind eye to America's first peoples. Now here's a point in the program, Leslie, that I'd like to bring in both Larry and Janet. I want to give you personally a background. Our listeners are familiar with Larry. Larry and I have been on air for over 2.5 years now doing this show. But Larry's background, as I may have mentioned to you earlier, is that of one of the original Black Panther Party members. So he began with the Black Panthers back in the 60s and was part of their struggle. And they're quite familiar with the same struggles that the Native American.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And what happened with Larry, also Larry was a victim of the COINTEL program that targeted Black Panther Party, the American Indian movement and such. And Larry's number came up. They got him, and he did about 10 years in prison. Along with other folks, there was a good percentage of the Native American population in the prisons. So Larry has firsthand experience with these folks and knows their struggles well as can draw on the comparisons and similarities with the black struggle here in the American cities and throughout America. And we also have Janet Rustino, my cousin in New York City, who was able to bring you and Kathy Kelly to our attention in the first place, and that brought in Kathy Bracewell here where we are in Florida. And Kathy's been in contact with you over the past year or so. And when the film screening was coming up recently, she reached out to us, and we were able to get a couple radio programs set up for you. So at this point in time, before we bring Larry in, I'd like to bring Janet in, and maybe the two of you can just tell us what happened yesterday at the Long Island Film Festival.
Oh,
Janet?
Terrific. Sure. The screening was fabulous. The crowd was applauding very enthusiastically, very, very enthusiastically. The woman who ran the festival was incredibly impressed, and there was a Q&A afterwards. Some people asked very intelligent questions, among them like that this should be on PBS, and WNYC should know about this. So it's a question of, okay, distribution, how do we get this out there on the college campuses, et cetera, et cetera. This is the second time I saw the film. I was fortunate enough to see it at Leslie's house. I guess this was 3 months ago. Was that, Leslie?
Maybe.
3 months ago? About that, you know. I was fortunate to be there with the family in a very cozy setting with, some food and noshes and talking afterwards. And the first time I saw it, very, very, very moved. The second time I saw it, I think still very, 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 very moved, almost to tears. choking back tears, especially towards the end of the film when they talked about the teenagers committing suicide. It's just, you know, it was hard to take, just so hard to take. I was happy to be at the film festival and lots of talk afterwards, and I'm just thrilled to have met Leslie probably 10 years ago at somebody's party. Those people no longer so much, or I don't even know what happened to them or whatever, but somehow it was, you know, very good. Thank you for facilitating me meeting Leslie 10 years ago or so, and we developed a friendship over the years since then. So I'm now, brainstorming as much as I can with, okay, who to tell, where to go, you know. Posting on Facebook is one thing, but, you know, certainly not enough. And I just had one thing I wanted to mention. Leslie, tell the folks about all of the big funding you got from all kinds of nonprofit organizations to do this film. Tell them how you funded it.
Well, I got about all right. I've got about $300. I think your friend Valerie King sent me $100. My friend Diane Graphic sent $100, and 2 anonymous donors, and one young lady from the Netherlands sent 25 or 50. I'm not even sure, but it came out to be $300. I am broke. I am totally.
This is Kickstarter, right?
Invested.
You had Kickstarter, or what campaign you had?
Oh, it was the other one. Not Kickstarter, because they won't let you keep anything, and unless you reach your goal. Oh. I forget the name of the other one. I mean, it doesn't matter because I never get any money. Right. So.
Well, that's
what I wanted to say is you did this on your own dime. You didn't sit back and say, "It's a great topic. Let me wait till I get money and I'll do it." You just dove in on your own dime, going broke, working for years and years and years to do this. It's like amazing, you know. I applaud
with one
you.
Camera and myself alone. Yeah.
And you know, that's so often the case. And this is a big part of this alternative media that we have here. The media is bought and paid for by the powers that are doing the oppression, you know, and we're not going to change that. So the answer, I believe, is creating our own media, and that's a big part of what UnitedWeStrike.com is about. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why, and basically what that is they're encouraging folks to just step out of the system, step out of it, you know. Every July 15th, United We Strike asks that people just check out for a day, take a break from the system, don't feed it for a day, you know, and it's amazing how you'll feel it, whatever you can do to accomplish that. And Janet did mention funding, and I neglected to give the website for Leslie, and that is the name of the website is snowflakevideo.com, snowflakevideo.com, and please go there and you can find where you can help support Leslie and her efforts with this film,
and purchase it. And anybody that would like to distribute it or works at a university, a college, a library, please, this movie needs to go out to the people. Honestly, you know, people really don't know. They don't know, and when they do know, they're in denial about it. Well, I have my own problems. Yes, we all do. But, you know, this is a human rights issue. It's beyond political. We go to other countries. We shun other countries. Oh, China. Oh, Russia. No. Oh, us. Like, we're different. We're not racist. We're so giving to people, our fellow man. Look what's happening today at the borders with these kids.
Well, this might be a good time to bring in Larry and his past experience on the hypocrisy and the racism here on our government, the broken promises, and Larry's experience on the struggle as one who's been there and lived through it. Larry, are you still with us?
Absolutely.
great.
I'd like to first of all thank both of our guests, Leslie and Janet, and I also
Hey,
want to
Aaron.
thank United. Hi, how are you? Just wanted to thank United We Strike. It's very important that they be supported. Let me just say this: that as I was listening, I picked up some key terms, Leslie, that you said. You said ongoing genocide, and I think we need to understand that that's precisely what this is. I believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Chief Seattle, who said that ultimately, what we are doing to Mother Earth and what we're doing to each other will ultimately come around to we ourselves. And this is what the people of this nation, of the United States, need to understand. The chickens are coming home to roost. And if we want to reverse this, then we must begin at the beginning. We're talking about the indigenous native peoples, people who were here thousands of years prior to the Europeans ever having made contact with what became known as, at least in Western terms, the North American continent or the United States of America. So, I think it's very critical for all of our listeners really to understand that we are all directly involved in this. We are all victims. And when we allow others to be victimized in prisoner of war camps, and that's exactly what Pine Ridge Reservation and literally thousands of other so-called reservations are. I think of the Bantustans in apartheid South Africa. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And I have the honor of not of being in prison, but I have the honor of, when I was in prison, actually being in prison with Leonard Peltier, who was one of the, as you know, one of the very active leaders, quote unquote, in the American Indian movement, and the party, that is to say the Black Panther Party, worked very, very closely with the American Indian movement because our struggles are the same. But it's not just the indigenous native peoples, it's not just black peoples, it's white people, it's brown people, it's the yellow people, it's all of us together or not at all of us together. So what is happening? For example, at the Pine Ridge Reservation, I really hate that word reservation. I hate it. It's a prisoner of war camp. I believe, Leslie, you said it was 344, designated as 344. We need to remember that. Ask the Japanese Americans about the camps that they were in. But we're talking about even more people, or peoples with an S, who have been dehumanized and are still being dehumanized. But you know what, my brothers and sisters? As we dehumanize them, we are dehumanizing ourselves. This has got to stop. It's got to be reversed. I'm so delighted, just delighted to have both of you, Leslie and Janet, on. Buffalo Nation obviously needs to be watched. It needs to be watched repeatedly. And yes, it may be painful, but you know what? Change doesn't come from comfortable people. Change comes from uncomfortable people. And right now, all of us should be extremely uncomfortable, which means all of us should be about making change. What we do and what we have done to our native, our indigenous brothers and sisters is precisely what we're doing to ourselves. Sorry about that, but I just had to make that point. Back to you.
Amen.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mitakaye Aysen, we are all related.
Yes.
Well, you both watched the, Janet, you were at the screening yesterday, and you mentioned there was a question in the Q&A. Well, first of all, how was the attendance? I know it was an afternoon time slot on a Friday, but you mentioned it was a pretty good attendance anyway?
Well, honestly, I don't know what to compare it to.
Okay.
I mean, there were empty seats. What's the seating capacity of that
but
theater?
enough for a healthy Q&A is what I'm getting at. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. Let's
I always
pass on
would
that.
like more
Okay.
people there, but-
We'll move on, Janet. We'll move on.
Yeah.
Okay. Leslie,
Yes.
I'm assuming that you were the one there being the answering in the Q&A, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Q&A. What kind of questions were posed, and what were the concerns of the folks that were asking questions, and also what was the hope for the film? What were the major points of emphasis that you wanted to get across with your film?
Well, I think everybody, Larry, you were wonderful. You are wonderful. You're so articulate, and you said everything that I don't even want to follow this man. I think
that's our Larry.
That's
Yeah.
Larry, who I hope to someday be able to meet in Minnesota, where Dennis Banks is, and the OB-GYN. I don't know if I'm saying Anishab, and I'm going to say it wrong. It's very difficult for me to speak in another language. But I think it's the Ojibwe Indians that live there.
Ojibwe, yeah.
Ojibwe, yeah. And it's quite a beautiful state, even though it's too cold. Nevertheless, I think the points really are what it's very complicated. The life is very complicated. If you take multi-generations, and this is since, let's say, the 14 or 1500s or 1800s, when we were able to put these people into the prisoner of war camp or to the reservation, they have been stripped of everything that they've ever known, their culture, the mores, as you said, their spirituality. Now you have one generation after another, and each generation loses so much because it's been taken away from them. And when you see the movie, you can really understand the context of why things are the way they are today, which is these children have no hope. And that's the most important thing, is how can we help these children? Where can we intervene? Somebody needs to step up and say, we can write a grant. These children don't even have a library. There's not a movie theater.
Right.
But there's plenty of drugs, there's plenty of alcohol, there's plenty of babies having babies, as they say, children from 12 to on up. And because they're so closely related, many of these children come from parents that are related by maybe as cousins or half-brothers or sisters that they don't even know.
Right.
So now you have that thrown in on top of fetal alcoholism, and
right.
It's just incredulous.
And I did notice from the trailer that the gangs have made quite an
impact. Yeah.
Impact in the reservations. Now there is no hope, and they've seemed to move in and are a part of the life there now more than ever.
Yes, well,
the gangs.
You have teenagers with all these hormones and frustrations and alcohol and drugs and meth, which is very big, and you have a warrior nation that still has that energy, and they turn it, they're imploding. They're actually the whole country. Our country, I believe, is suicidal. As Larry said, what we do to other people, we do to ourselves.
And Larry can touch on this in the struggles that were happening in the black community, and a lot of the oppression, from what I understand, during the 60s when the Black Panther Party arose out in California, was the oppression was coming from the police in a lot of ways, and of course there were other factors of oppression there. But actually, I believe the name of the original Black Panther Party was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense.
Yes.
And the people realized that, look, this government is not here to save us. they're hurting us. They're knocking us down, and it sounds like that's very much what the Native Americans have been facing, and what the Black Panther Party did was they realized, look, ain't nobody going to save us but ourselves, and that's when the Black Panther Party came to be. And I'm wondering, Larry, back then was at the same time was the American Indian movement. Is there still anything left of the American Indian movement, or are they involved, or has anything come forward to take its place?
Well, AIM is still alive to the extent that any real organization, to the extent that any real organization is allowed to be alive in Babylon, as I call the United States. In fact, as I'm talking with you, I'm standing here and I'm looking at an AIM poster, and it says, "On the Red Road, 30 years and still strong," and another poster from AIM that says, I'm not your Indian anymore." And I think that it's really important for us to understand, and I want to reiterate this, I really do, that we have got to understand that what is being done to our indigenous Native sisters and brothers, we are doing to each other. It's going to come home. The chickens are going to come home unless we reverse this, and we've got to reverse it. I was just listening to a song that always brings tears to my eyes, always. It's a song by Buffy St. Marie, and the name of the song is "Now That the Buffalo's Gone." I encourage everyone, all the listeners, Google it if you don't have it. "Now That the Buffalo's Gone." Listen to the words of what that sister says in that song. It's powerful. It's so urgent for all of us today to be involved. And I want to throw out some kudos, if I may, very quickly, to my indigenous Native brothers and sisters. And by the way, I never told you this, Phil, but my grandmother, not my great-grandmother, but my grandmother is full-blooded Native from the eastern part of the United States. But anyway, I want to thank my Native brothers and sisters. You know, when I was in prison, first they imprisoned me in Canada. That's where Leonard Peltier and myself were both imprisoned in the same prison, and we, as it turned out, had the same lawyers, etc. Anyway, my point is the United States government, working hand in glove with the Canadian government, attempted to murder me and set me up, get me stabbed in prison, etc., etc. But I want to say this. I want to say it was the indigenous brothers and sisters, and in this case it was the indigenous brothers, because there was all males, obviously, in the prison, that came together. They had a group called the Native Brotherhood. And to my shock and amazement, they actually voted me not only as a member of the Brotherhood, but as vice president of the Native Brotherhood. This was in British Columbia, Canada, at a prison there before they shipped me to California. But I thank them for many reasons, because in so doing, they literally, I don't mean euphemistically, I mean literally, saved my life. Okay, because that was a message that the brothers were putting out, the indigenous brothers, that no, you will not move on him, because if you move on him, you're moving on us. This is what the struggle has to be about. Our sisters and brothers of all colors, black, white, brown, red, yellow, we've got to understand that it's time to turn this situation around. And we can do that. You know, and as we said in the Black Panther Party, all power to the people.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the people also need to know that this problem exists, and that's a big part. You mentioned that already, Leslie, and Janet alluded to it as well, that there's a lot of folks that don't even know. And we went back earlier to the corporate-owned media. Larry likes to call it the corporate stream media, and that's what it is. Follow the money, and it's basically we find out, we know about what they want us to know or not know. So that's why we do need to continue this alternative media. And I want to once again mention Leslie's website, because Leslie went ahead and made the film. The film needed to be made because people need to know about this. They have to know about it first before they can help. They have to know that these folks are hurting. And again, the website where you can go and support Leslie Abbey in this effort is snowflakevideo.com. That's SNOWFLAKE VIDEO, snowflakevideo.com. And please go there and help in whatever way you can. My understanding is folks can purchase a copy of this film there. Is it on a DVD?
Yes, it is. And actually, interesting, speaking about the AIM movement, I did have a wonderful interview, and he's also in this movie, from Russell Means, just before he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And he was in his 71st year, and he just was so reflective about his life growing up that it's really a piece of history. It's a treasure. And I have many more of interviews that really need to be heard.
Yes. And Janet also, go ahead, Janet. Go ahead, Janet.
I was just going to say, people can buy that directly from your website, correct?
Absolutely. People can buy the movies that I've made from me directly.
And then once the folks have the DVD, we want it to be seen. So you want folks to maybe get educators or community centers, churches, church groups. You want to get it out there to be seen. How would you recommend that folks? What do you want folks to do upon purchasing the DVD? Of course, other than watching it first, but as far as getting the word out there.
Well, I'm hoping that people can contact their universities, their colleges, nursing schools, alcohol and substance abuse counselors, social workers. Everybody needs to see this movie, as you said, and it needs to go to Europe. In fact, there's a young woman that bought it in Europe, said, I'm going to my local radio and TV studio. She says, I'm only one person, but this movie needs to go worldwide. I'm hoping, because it's for the Lakota, and it's for us. Whatever, as we, when we work to heal other people, we work to heal ourselves, and we need healing.
And as we took the name for our show, Leslie, Janet already knows this, and the folks that have listened into Larry and I in the past, the name of our program is We Cannot Be Silent, and we took that from Martin Luther King's Beyond Vietnam speech. Wow. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Martin Luther King who made the statement, injustice anywhere is injustice to us all. Yes.
Absolutely.
And so we really need to, because these folks are down, they're out, and they're not able to save themselves, and they need help. So we need to help the Native Americans portrayed in this film. We're getting down to just a few minutes left here. Once again, Leslie Abbey is our guest today. We want you to go to her website, snowflakevideo.com. But as far as the film itself, that's where you can purchase a copy of the DVD. But if you want to see the trailer, you have to go to youtube.com and then go to Leslie's channel, which is LESLYE Abbey, ABBEY, and there you'll see the 5-minute trailer to Buffalo Nation. The children are crying, and you can spread that to your email list, your Facebook pages, and let's get the word out, folks. Yes. And one more mention, Leslie, Larry and I, our intro also includes the rap from Gil Scott-Heron, where he says nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. So I did want to put that in. I'm getting a word here from Gary that we need to plug Janet's website. Go ahead, Janet, quickly. Where can folks find your work, Janet, please?
Oh, well, thank you. You'll find artwork at www.janetrestino.com, JANETRESTINO.com. There's artwork there. No prices on anything. And then I've got artwork on T-shirts and coffee mugs and all kinds of stuff that everybody can afford at cafepress.com/Janet's Art House. So there are two websites, and if you go to YouTube and plug in my name, you'll see a bunch of performances and poetry and a cappella singing. And also if you go to cityworldradio.com, into the archives, my show was Heart and Soul, and actually Leslie's responsible for me getting that happening in the first place.
Very good, very good.
Try to raise money.
And the clear thing, you bet, Janet. And we still have Larry to plug. And as you know, Larry's a prolific writer and has done interviews and everything. And Larry, I believe the website is
www.blackactivist.org. That's Black Activist WG, stands for WritersGuild.org, and intrepidreport.com. That's intrepidreport.com. Let me say very quickly, thank you, Gary, thank you, United We Strike. Big kudos to you, Leslie, and you, Janet. The struggle continues. All power to the people.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. We're just about to sign off. Again, UnitedWeStrike.com is the website, and you can go there and get the YouTube for all the shows off the marathon. UnitedWeStrike.com, so you'll be able to hear the archive of this show as well. Gary, thanks again, and until next month, don't buy, don't comply, ask why.
Well, thank you. It's quite the presentation, and as always, we appreciate your participation in the marathon. But quick question: any chance I could get any of the four parties that I have in this conversation right now to participate in our roundtable that'll be coming up in about a half an hour?
I'll participate.
Okay, I got.
And yeah, I will too, Gary. Call me. I don't know how long, but I will certainly just give me a call.
Okay, so I got a Phil, I got a Larry, and I got a Janet. How about you, Leslie? You want to play for a little while?
I'll give it a shot. How do I do that? You call me back?
I'll be calling you in about a half an hour. I have one more 30-minute segment I have to play, and then we'll be doing roundtable. So it'll be in about 35 minutes.
Great.
There we go.
You, Gary.
Very good. I'll be talking to you again soon, and thank you so much for your participation in this month's roundtable. Good night, all.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Hey, this is recording master Tim Hewitt for United We Strike, saying join us every second Saturday of each month for the United We Strike Radio Marathon, and the 15th of each month, where we do the thing of don't buy, don't comply, and ask why.